Hello and welcome to Story Time with Mr. Laws. Today we're reading Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger by Lou Saka. Chapter 7. A Bad Word. Early in the morning, a white limousine drove up to Wayside School, just like always. The chauffeur got out of the car, then opened the passenger door, just like always. Mr. Kidswatter stepped out of the car. "Thank you, James," he said. "My name is David," said the chauffeur, just like always. Mr. Kidswatter entered the school building. "Well, good morning, Mr. Kidswatter," said Mrs. Day, the school secretary. She handed him a cup of hot coffee, just like always. "Thank you, Miss Knight," said Mr. Kidswatter. He walked into his office, except his office door was closed. He smashed into it, spilling coffee all over his green suit. "Who closed my door?" he demanded. "Why didn't you just open it?" asked Mrs. Day. "It's always open in the morning," said Mr. Kidswatter. "How was I supposed to know it was closed this time?" Up on the 30th floor, Mrs. Jules took the register. Todd was absent. "Oh dear, I hope Todd's all right," said Mrs. Jules. "Todd's never all right," said Joy. She and Maricia laughed. Damien looked at Mrs. Jules. Ever since he returned to Wayside School, he'd thought there was something different about her, but he still couldn't figure out what it was. Mr. Kidswatter's voice came over the PA system. "Good morning, boys and girls." There was the usual pause. "Today, I want to talk about doors," said Mr. Kidswatter. "This should be interesting," said Mrs. Jules. "Do you know how many doors there are in this school building?" asked Mr. Kidswatter. Mrs. Jules shook her head. "Well, there are a lot, over 30. And some of you probably have doors at home too. Maybe more than one. All those doors. Think about it." "Well, Mr. Kidswatter's certainly given us something to think about this morning," said Mrs. Jules. "So remember," said Mr. Kidswatter, "and please be careful. Always check to see if a door is open before going through it. And if it's not open, open it. And if you can't open it yourself, ask someone to open it for you. This may not make a lot of sense to you now, but someday you will thank me." Mrs. Jules looked around the class. "Oh, that's good advice," she said. "I think most of you already knew it, but at least it's nice to know we have a principal who cares." "I hate doors," shouted Mr. Kidswatter. "It's a dumb word. Door, door, door. Who made up that word anyway?" Mrs. Jules waited a little longer, but Mr. Kidswatter seemed to be finished. "Oh, some people just don't like doors," she said. "I have made a new rule," declared Mr. Kidswatter. "You may no longer say that word. You know what word I mean, but don't say it. Instead, I have made up a new word for you. Guzak. Open the Guzak. Shut the Guzak. Lock the Guzak. Don't you think that's a better word? I do. From now on, that other word is a bad word. I have made my decision." Everyone turned around and looked at the Guzak. Suddenly it opened. Todd entered. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said. "Oh, that's okay," said Mrs. Jules. "I'm just glad you're not sick or hurt." "Oh, my dad locked his keys in the car," Todd explained. "We had to use a coat hanger to unlock the door." Everyone gasped. And Mrs. Jules made Todd write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Chapter 8. Santa Claus. 'Twas the last day of school before winter vacation, and the children were having a small celebration. Their artwork was hung by the blackboards with pride, snowmen and mooses and a joyful sleigh ride. They ate homemade cookies, red and green ones, of course, when Kathy declared, "I don't believe in Santa Claus." She just opened her mouth and said what she said. Santa Claus isn't real, and besides that, he's dead. So you bet I will pout, and you bet I will cry, you bet I will shout, I'm telling you why. Stephen covered his ears. No, you're wrong, he shouted. It's not true. There is a Santa Claus. I know there is. Ho, 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 laughed Kathy. Kathy's just saying that because she never gets any presents, said Jason. Yeah, all she ever gets is a lump of coal, said Rondi. Wrong, said Kathy. I get loads of presents. My parents buy them for me. They have lots of money. They buy me anything I want. She bit off the head of a reindeer cookie. The only thing that matters is how rich your parents are. If they have lots of money, then you'll get lots of good presents. If they're poor, then you'll just get a few crummy presents. Everyone tried to argue with her, but Kathy just asked them all the old questions like, yeah, so how does a fat man fit down a skinny chimney then? Or how could he visit everyone's house in the whole world in one night then? And of course, nobody knew the answers. Nobody ever has. Only Santa knows the answers to those questions, said Rondi. Don't you even like Christmas? Asked Stephen. Sure I do, said Kathy. I get lots of presents and I don't have to work. Then she stuck out her tongue and called Stephen a jerk. Poor Stephen sputtered as his face turned quite blue. If you don't believe in Santa, he won't believe in you. But Kathy just yelped, you know that it's true. Do you still believe in the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and Miss Zarves too? Let's ask Mrs. Jules, said Maricia. She's a teacher who's wise. Let's ask Mrs. Jules. She never lies. The children crowded round their wise teacher's desk and asked her the question never found on a test. Is there a Santa? You're a teacher with smarts. Is Santa Claus real? They asked with pure hearts. And oh, Mrs. Jules, that teacher so wise, looked at their faces and bright, eager eyes. She had to say something. It was her job to reply. Tell them, yelled Kathy, that reindeer can't fly. Outside the window, snowflakes were falling. Inside the window, Mrs. Jules was stalling. Are our parents all liars? Is it all just a trick to make us be good for fear of St. Nick? Tell us the truth. Don't try to fake it. Is there a Santa? Let us know. We can take it. Mrs. Jules cleared her throat. Then she cleared it again. She put down her pencil and she picked up her pen. Hey, look! Shouted Leslie. Look there! Who's that? Someone is coming in through the Guzak. Sure enough, the door opened. It had to open quite wide, as a strange-looking stranger stepped sideways inside. He wore a red suit and had a white fluffy beard, and even for Wayside he looked pretty weird. His fat belly shook like a bowl full of jello. There was no doubt about it. They knew that fellow. It was Lewis, the art teacher. What are you doing in that stupid suit, Lewis? Asked Cherie. Aren't you hot? Why are you wearing a fake beard? Asked Todd. Is that a pillow under your jacket? Asked Jason. Kathy was delighted. See, she said, that proves there's no Santa Claus. If there was, Lewis wouldn't have to dress up like a fool and pretend to be him. I'm not Lewis, said Lewis. I'm Santa Claus. Ho, ho. You're lying to us, Lewis, said John. Everyone's always lying to us. Kathy's right. Christmas is nothing but a dirty, stinking lie. I was just trying to bring a little holiday cheer, said Lewis. Go home, Jerome, said Terence. Now, that's no way to talk to Lewis, said Mrs. Jules. Lewis is one of Santa's special helpers. Really, Lewis? Asked Edie. Lewis looked at Mrs. Jules. That's right, he said. The children were all very impressed. Well, have you ever met him? Demanded Kathy. Well, no, not exactly, Lewis admitted. See, said Kathy, it's just another lie. You don't have to meet Santa to be one of his special helpers, said Mrs. Jules. Well then, how do you know what he wants you to do? Asked John. Well, that's easy, said Mrs. Jules. You just have to be nice to other people. Whenever you give someone a present or sing a holiday song, you're helping Santa Claus. To me, that's what Christmas is all about, helping Santa Claus. Can I be one of his helpers? Asked Damien. You bet, said Mrs. Jules. Hey, everybody, shouted Damien. I am one of Santa's helpers. Me too, said Alison. There must be a Santa Claus, cheered Stephen, because it feels so good to help him. So the children all helped Santa in every way they could, by singing songs and giving gifts, and just by being good. But there is no Santa Claus, Cathy continued to yelp. Well, if that's the case, said Mrs. Jules, he must really need our help. Well, we'll continue tomorrow with a few more chapters. See you then.